September 16th, 1994. At around 10 in the morning, 62 students between the ages of 6 and 12 are let outside for recess. Just 15 minutes later, a handful of students frantically run back into their school where the teachers and faculty are gathered for a personnel meeting. And that's when the students make a claim that jars their superiors. Zimbabwe, Africa. In an area called Ruwa, a small agricultural region. What Ruwa is truly known for at this time is the Ariel School, an expensive private school predominantly made of upper to middle class expatriate students and a smaller body of African pupils. While playing outside, they noticed approximately 3 silver disc-like objects appear in the sky before the largest one landed on the ground, as the other 2 remained hovering. They claim the objects emitted fast-changing colorful lights, and then a small group of creatures briefly disembarked the aircraft. The creatures were described as wearing skin-tight, dark suits and having large eyes, small noses, and small mouths. Some students claim one of the creatures climbed onto the top of the ship and appeared to be running in slow motion, while the other approached the students. Not long after, the creatures returned inside of the craft and flew away. The students share this experience with their teachers, but it's chalked up to be a prank stemming from the overactive imaginations of children.
I thought it was an alien and he had big eyes.
But over the course of the day, more and more students persist, corroborating the story.
I saw something silver on the ground amongst the trees and a person in black.
They had big black eyes. That's all I saw. I saw a glimpse. They kind of turned around and stared and then went back into a kind of like ship.
That evening, many of the students return home and tell their parents about the strange thing that they saw. Almost overnight, word of the incident blazes through Ruwa like wildfire.
Hundreds of people today phoned the ZBC saying they sighted an unidentified flying object.
And it isn't long before the media gets involved. There's one word that's spoken more than anything else: aliens. Tim Leach, a reporter for the BBC, was first on the scene. He arrived at the Ariel School on September 19th, just 3 days after the incident occurred.
Ariel School, 19th September 94, 12:12 local time.
Upon talking to the students at Ariel, Leach famously stated,
"I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this UFO thing."
Leach's findings were swiftly filmed and produced in a BBC special.
Large, brightly coloured object was seen travelling very fast above Zimbabwe, Zambia, and South Africa.
On camera, the children of Ariel School again testified, in greater detail, what they saw just days earlier. They again described the silver disc-like spacecraft that glinted in the trees. They note the creatures disembarked were small, the same height as the children, and they had big black eyes low on their face. What Leach's documentary also reveals is that the students of Ariel were not the only ones to bear witness to something so strange. In fact, other locals across the region reported sighting bright lights in the sky with a very orange glow.
Saw a glow over my chicken run. A very orange glow.
It was a helicopter or...
It's just a big round wall.
Approximately 14 people ultimately corroborated this. One citizen reported that they had at first assumed the light was coming from engines of an Airbus 200, a passenger aircraft. Yet, most shockingly, the aircraft did not emit any noise at all and was totally silent. A particularly compelling part of Leach's documentary features the Ariel School's own headmaster. When asked his thoughts of the incident, he was quoted on video saying,
I feel sure that the children feel that they did see something. I agree that it could be something that we are not common with. But to actually say that it was a UFO, I would be reluctant to make a decision like that.
Just one day after Leach visited Ruwa, UFOologist Cynthia Hind was next to visit the Ariel School. Hind was already prominent in the community, an avid believer and researcher of extraterrestrial life on Earth. Her investigation took particular interest in the drawings made by the students of Ariel School. She was thorough in collecting the eyewitness descriptions of the life forms seen by the pupils. Hind was careful to note the differences in perception between the native Zimbabweans and the white South African pupils. From her interviews, she ascertained that some of the students thought the figures that emerged before them were either the Zvikwambo or the Tokoloshe. The Zvikwambo in African culture is believed to be a human spirit raised by magic. The Tokoloshe has a more sinister connotation. In Shona and Adeble folklore, the Tokoloshe are evil goblins. Though the students themselves had some opposing views of what they saw, Cynthia Hind was not discouraged by the varying perspectives. In fact, she believed that the interpretations, though somewhat differed due to the cultural heritage of the students, was only further indication that the students did, in fact, see the same thing. The third immediate investigation into the Ariel School UFO incident is perhaps one of the most fascinating of all. The late John Mack was an American psychiatrist, so acclaimed in his field that he was head of the Department of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He specialized in child psychology, adolescent psychology, and the psychology of religion. Mack even won the Pulitzer Prize for biography in 1977. He found his way to Ruwa when none other than BBC's Tim Leach called him after visiting the Ariel School. Leach was so stupefied by the events, he fully believed that only John Mack could be the one to truly unpack just what had happened. So just over a month after the incident, John Mack travels all the way from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Ruwa, Zimbabwe. And when he meets the children of the Ariel School, a shocking detail emerges. The children insisted that when the aliens approached, they began to communicate telepathically. The message the children received seemed to have varied from child to child. However, what they all professed was that the message was a kind of warning, specifically related to our environment. Some of the students received messages condemning humans for their role in polluting the earth. Others claimed to have been more directly warned about future climate catastrophes. And again, all claimed to have engaged in this dialogue with these foreign creatures through telepathic communication. What cannot be disputed is that the children of the Ariel School truly believed that they saw something on September 16th, 1994. But that doesn't mean that there's still several unanswered questions to unpack. One of the first questions that troubles me is this: why have no adults or faculty members at the Ariel School come forward to corroborate the students' experience? At first, the answer seems pretty obvious. It's stated that while the students were outside playing, the teachers were inside holding a staff meeting. But I can't really wrap my head around this. It's hard for me to accept that over 60 children between the ages of 6 and 12 were allowed to play outside completely unsupervised. And if true, it strikes me as pretty negligent. So let us entertain another possibility. What if an adult did see what happened? Why would they have remained silent? To explore this question, I think it's useful to cite another fascinating case similar to this one: the West Hall School incident in Australia. In 1966, around 11 in the morning, a group of students claimed to have seen an object hovering over their athletic field near the power line tower. They claimed that the object would move very suddenly, quickly, and quietly, and it descended into a wooden reserve where it sat for some 20 minutes before abruptly flying away. Like the Ariel School incident, there was a media swarm surrounding the whole event, but it wasn't long before the kids were written off as having invented the incident due to their overactive imaginations. The whole incident was written off due to a high-altitude balloon deployed by the British government. Years later, however, someone came forward who hadn't yet publicly spoken on the event: West Hall School's science teacher.
A teacher who claimed to see UFOs hovering over a Melbourne school says military officials threatened to have him fired if he ever spoke about the incident.
He claimed to have seen exactly what the kids saw: a silver, fast-moving, hovering object. But why did he remain silent? The teacher claims that after privately making claims supporting the students' statements, he was confronted at his home one evening by two uniformed officials. They took his statement down in greater detail before insisting that he made the events up. The teacher alleges that he was warned that if he ever spoke about the incident, he would be accused of drunkenness and subsequently fired from his job. This is why, he states, it took years before I officially came forward as an eyewitness. Could this possibly explain why no faculty or staff at the Ariel school saw what the children did? Or was the timing indeed so perfectly arranged that the unintended students were the sole witnesses to this event? Another question I have is in regards to UFOologist Cynthia Hind. One of the first things skeptics pointed out was that they deemed it a coincidence that all of the students drew a similar picture of what these alleged aliens looked like. Their drawings are the familiar depiction of an alien: large skulls, huge black eyes, and tiny mouths. It's the image that we often conjure when we hear the word alien. Many believe that these kids were influenced by media, and it's fair to assume that by the age of 6 to 8, they would have seen this familiar picture of an alien, either in a movie, a cartoon, or a comic, and that these familiar images influenced their perception of the creatures that they saw. Cynthia Hind, however, claimed that these students were not exposed to the media at all, due to the fact that they lived in a remote countryside and were often the children of farmers. However, let's remember, the Ariel school was an expensive private school, and that many of the attending students were from middle upper class families. I find it very difficult to accept Hind's conclusion that these students had never been exposed to media prior to this alleged sighting. Then, there is, of course, a more obvious question. If the students were wrong, what could it have been that they saw that day? One popular answer: nothing. It could have been mass hysteria. Mass hysteria is a fascinating phenomenon wherein large groups of people fall victim to similar conditions of contagious anxiety. Famous cases involving mass hysteria include the Dancing Plague of 1518 and even the Salem witch trials. Many believe that the Ariel UFO incident was a unique case of mass hysteria. Perhaps a few children saw something strange in the sky that day, or perhaps they saw nothing at all and merely began a rumor as part of a larger prank. Children, of course, impressionable, and they do have highly active imaginations. Could it be possible what began as a joke between a few students soon evolved into a widespread panic? Or, let's again accept the fact that what the children saw was valid. The question now becomes, did all the children see it, or did only a few? Is the fact that all of the students drew similar images and gave similar testimony evidence in support of the phenomena? Or is it indicative of an implicit bias the students may have had without realizing it? This leads me to something that I find highly pressing and important to note: the case of Pulitzer Prize-winning psychiatrist John Mack. By the time John Mack visited the Ariel school, he was already deeply fascinated by the psychology of alien sightings, specifically alien abduction phenomena. He had already begun conducting an in-depth research on people who had claimed to have been, at some point in their lives, abducted by aliens. Mack's findings were published in 1994 in the novel Abduction, but this was no ordinary release for the Pulitzer Prize-winning author. Mack's recent studies were widely criticized, particularly by his contemporaries in academia. His colleagues stopped talking to him seriously, going so far as to publicly condemn him, denouncing him as crazy and paranoid. What's more is Mack's methods began to be criticized. Several people came forward accusing him of using unprofessional interview techniques that either skewed the subject's answers, or they claimed that Mack merely took his subject's testimony at face value and did not make any considerable effort to find the nuances in their statements. The criticism against Mack grew so heavy that Harvard University launched an official investigation into his research and then threatened his tenure status at the university.
I never felt this could derail my career.
We have to consider that John Mack may have been more unreliable than it was once believed. After all, why is it that the children never reported anything about telepathic messages to Tim Leach or Cynthia Hind? Is there something that Mack may have done or said that led them to add this element into their story? The investigation against Mack closed, and he kept his tenure and continued to publish research on alien abduction. In 2004, he was killed by a drunk driver while crossing the street. Many of his supporters believed that this was an assassination attempt and a warning against other prominent figures who dared to explore what Mack did. From this, a far more important question arises. Why would John Mack do it? Why would he risk his career and potentially his life if he didn't believe the children of the Ariel school? I think it's important to turn to the very people that this story begins with, the students. Today, many of the Ariel students continue to speak on this incident and still hold the memories of September 16th today. One of these students is Zah, who has spoken to several media outlets. Fascinatingly, Zah has stated he understands the nature of his story and why it might be difficult for others to accept. He's even gone so far as to say he would not believe his own story if he had not been there that day. And yet, his recounting of the events has not changed. In 2022, a documentary titled Ariel Phenomenon, directed by Randall Nickerson, was released. It follows many of the Ariel School alumni today and explores their lives in the wake of September 16th. Many of the students have expressed feelings of distress and anguish over what happened to them. Many grew up in fear and paranoia that if they ever shared what they saw, they would be ridiculed and cast out by their own friends and family. One former student remarked that she never told her own husband about what she considers to be a life-changing event.
My husband doesn't even know about it.
The events that took place are largely undisputed, and yet the incident has not been publicly validated or recognized. Why is that? We have over 60 children who have claimed to have seen the exact same thing at the exact same time. Can we as a society accept that they did all see the same thing? And if we reject it, why? If aliens did in fact travel to Ruwa, Zimbabwe that day in 1994, why did they choose a primary school to visit? Why did they choose children to interact with and potentially warn us about the fate of our planet? Perhaps it's because children have the most open, accepting minds of us all. What are your thoughts? Do you believe the children of the Ariel School? Thanks again for watching. Please join me in the comments section with your own theories about what occurred at the Ariel School. As always, I look forward to sifting through the evidence in hopes of coming closer to the truth.